So we're starting in 5 minutes. If you have any questions, drop them in the chat. In the meantime, I'm going to draw a little bit. I should probably set a timer, but I'm not going to. So just catch me working while we're talking. Let me grab a few more sheets of paper out of here. Somebody was asking me the other day if they didn't think this piece was done. And I think that's all dependent upon what's important to you. That's the way it goes. Depends on what's significant to you in the moment that you're drawing. So tonight, maybe I will start a little early. Let me see. Yeah, maybe we'll start a little early. I wanted to start by drawing my hand. And I wanted to talk about life tonight. I felt like talking about living things. And so if I was to start drawing this hand, I could start by just letting it live, letting it actually be a thing that isn't dead, but turns and rotates and spins and I just found out that the vocal cords are 12 to 16 times more dexterous than the hand. But if I start drawing this and just trying to let it be, I'm starting to think about what it does. Like, what does a palm, what does a palm do? And it's hard, it's interesting for me, and not hard, but interesting to be thinking about drawing from the perspective of speaking about it, because it's not about words at all. It's about the gesture of the human body coming out and becoming a record on a page, right? At least that is true for me. Just seeing how I'm holding my hand flat, thinking about things in life that are directed or programmed to be a certain way, like a normative way, like drawing is supposed to be of an object or a noun or a thing. And I just see so much abstraction online is design, and isn't all that much about the history of abstraction and what we've done as humans to look at our world and consider things like the equivalencies or parallels or the actual act of perception being the medium, like a Bridget Riley would have done. If you think she was an op artist that worked back in the 60s, 70s. I'm terrible with dates, but I think you get the drift. That she was interested in not in pencils and paint and line, but in what happened in our mind that was meaningful to drawing. And I look at a lot of abstraction these days, and it's just design. It's not really looking at what's happening. So a great example would be right now, I am drawing basically a noun of my hand, and I'm drawing a very active noun of my hand, but I'm still drawing a noun of my hand. And if I was to be honest, I would have to say that my hand does a lot more than that, and I'd have to let go of wanting to perform for an audience and really try to start feeling my hand doing, this and this and this and then this, and then thinking like from one perspective, it looks like my finger just goes up and back, but from another perspective, clearly my fingers are straight and then curled, right? Straight and then curled. And it's even hard for me to make that one thing. I'm making it one, and then I'm coming down and making it another. Whereas the truth is, it's kind of this, and then depending on what part of it I'm drawing, if I'm only relating to the tips, the tip goes like that up there, right? But the whole finger went through something while I was doing that. And it's hard to record when I start to leave my brain behind for a minute and I start to draw all that's happening there and try to really absorb this internal convexity, concavity. Sorry, words throughout this will be difficult, but convex concavity, concavity. And then try to absorb the simultaneous motion of my hand stretching and feeling open and flat and like a planar, soft kind of place to exist, rather than its action of curling and feeling that tension and feeling the I think it's called in German Spannung, which I just think is great. And somebody can correct me on that if they know better than I do. I know nothing of German, but I know when I was teaching again in Japan, they were talking about Spannung being the tension that's in design, and we don't really talk about it in Western, in American art design training. But Spannung is like one of the elements of design, like color, line, shape, texture, value, and I'm sorry, I think tension was one of the principles, and the principles are unity, balance, rhythm, emphasis, and Spannung was one of theirs, which is just interesting to me. Anyways, so I end up with this, right? I have this green version of the drawing underneath, which is my hand, and then and that's what I call the green one would be the noun. It was like I said, it was a pretty active noun because of the way I draw, but it was a noun. And this is probably upside down for you all, so you'll have to. Does that help to see it that way? But this was the hand as a noun. This is the hand as a verb, as it actually living its life and doing something. And very little of what people are doing these days tends to be an action of what that thing is or does. And I guess I miss it because I want more of, we've officially started 2 minutes ago. I want more of life to come into imagery, and I think it's because photography has made it so that a hand is drawn from one singular perspective, from a particular distance, through a particular lens, which is my eye in this case. But photography would record the boundaries of this thing, my hand in this moment, and it doesn't really indicate much about all we know. Okay, it indicates what we see from one perspective. It's clearly, this little moment that happens here and does whatever it does, goes up over here and TikTok's back, TikTok's back and is my hand. Grossly, I'm not making any effort. And I also, just so you know, the way I understand something and draw it has nothing to do with drawing the way I'm drawing right now. So it's hard for me to understand something like this. The only way I can understand this is by really feeling it like a mass. I have to run my pencil up the side and across the top, and then I realize, the top is a lot longer than I realized it was, and then I come back down over here, and then I might go underneath, under here, to come up to the back side, and when I come up here, I come very close to that pinky knuckle right there. It's just a little bit away. So I go up, and then I could come, across the front again, around the side, down the front, and then under, and then just start knowing, and then I'm going the other way. I'm going this way, over the top of this mountain of a hand, and then up the wrist, and then the wrist also goes around, right? Clearly, there's a band on it. You can see. This is an interesting point in the history of art, is what we call a primary and a secondary curve. A primary curve tells you something is round, and then to what degree, like my wrist is sort of flat, and then it flattens out, and then it goes around these edges, right, where it disappears from my point of view. So this is facing my point of view, right? It's flat to my face, and then this goes away from my face until it disappears. So I'd be going over that edge. An interesting point in the history of art is how they indicated that primary curve versus the secondary curve. The secondary curve is the fact that my arm goes in and out, that it's thinner down here and bigger up here. I'm exaggerating right now so you see what I mean. But that would be the curve that runs this way, down this line of my arm, right? So most of the time when somebody draws something like this, right, and here's me making, you're gonna laugh, laugh, or cry. But if I try to draw like this, I can't. I need to have that massing of the form and to feel it in my body. I can't draw with my eyes. My eyes alone don't, it's just who I am. You see how funky my hand looks? Whereas if I was to say, if I was to take a minute and look at this hand and say, it's a big patty, you know, it's a big long patty. It's got a big old palm and it's got fingers at the top, and there's a thumb off to the side on this patty. But there's the patty, there's the, you know, the wrist. And then to be honest, I'm demonstrating more than how I actually draw, because I'm saying things like fingers and palms and wrists, but this would all be one thing. It would be one word that I would have, which would be hand, right? And then I would start to notice things. You know, I might notice a negative sort of shape over here, this little wave of a curve that goes up the side of my arm, how my arm kind of comes down into my hand. I might notice things like I just tucked my thumb up kind of tight, so it leaves this little cliff over here. I notice the thin little space between my fingers, and these two practically touch. They crisscross right in here, very, very cozy to each other. I could look at something like there's a big triangle over here, right, that opens up. And then the whole thing is coming up off the paper, right? It goes up, over, and down. So I come up, over, and down. And when I come up pretty high on this side. And then I slope down a little and in. So I'd come up, and I don't know if you can see this. Let me see. Yeah, you can. I come up, I go down a little bit, like not straight across like I did initially, but come down, feeling that, and then I tuck around the corner, right? Right around the corner. So now I can sort of feel that arc of this curve, and the curve tightens up down here and becomes, you know, a wrist and whatnot. And then I could feel these fingers out. Now, remember I said there's a tiny little sliver here, and it gets even smaller here. They kind of smack up against each other. So I could map it out. I don't believe in that much, but I could map it out and be exact, but what I'm doing is feeling it out. I'm not mapping it out. I'm going across the finger like this right now, up and over, and just feeling the length of it. And I might start at this knuckle right here, right, where this knuckle is, and I might feel myself walk down the finger, and walk across the finger, and realize that the fingernail is somewhere out here, right? And then I come back down that finger into the hand, and I feel the softness of this fleshy bit. You know, it's quite gentle, and then it drops off and gets quite firm through there, and then wraps around the bottom, and then this little thumb comes up and over. He's got like a little whippet right here. It's got a round shape, but then it almost goes in there. It goes in like a concavity again. That word keeps coming up tonight. Wrap around, and then there's this nail. And I might want to check out what's the relationship between this finger coming down into that knuckle, into the bone of the hand. And what it makes me realize is there's the knuckle is back here a little bit further, and then that thumb comes up, and it's a fairly plump little object when it comes up. And oh, it's so sheer right here. It drops right off like a cliff. And then I come up into that thumb. Now, right now, I'm not too worried about that thumb. I'm just thinking of the whole hand, because I got a little wrapped up in demonstrating this area. But I really want to feel the whole hand for a minute and know where I am. So there's that finger, and there's this finger, and there's that finger. Oh, that finger is quite a ways off at an angle unto himself. And then this slope of the hand. The hand has all these nuances in it. It's got veins and wrinkles, and this is kind of a lovely thing in describing form. If a form is going in one direction, like, we'll just call it like a mountain, like up, it goes up. These little dents in here and stuff are valleys. They go down, right? So if I was to draw them, they'd go in the opposite direction. Instead of going up like a mountain, they'd go down, down into the valley a little. So if I was drawing this hand, I might go up, and then I dip down in these little areas, and then I go up, and then I go down. Now, one of the problems people get into is they draw something like this, where it looks like a fashion model with super cheeks. I'll show you. It's basically like this. Like, well, I'm gonna get the light on it. And what you want is actually that, you want the fundamental form of the whole face, and then that little bit of a dent that goes in there. So let's go back to this drawing for a second. Let me see if I can see what we're looking at. Yeah, I can. So what you want is this fundamental form of the face, or in this case, the back of the hand. And then you want to know where it goes in and out. It goes in and out quite subtly. It doesn't go in and out, in and out. It goes a little bit down, a little bit up. So if I get back to that shape somewhat of what my hand was, and I don't also believe in everything being exactly the way I had it before, because it's called life. And you can get lots of drawing tutorials about things that are static and somewhat still, or it's like, I call them dead life instead of still life. They're like dead lives. But one of the things that was brought up to me was that most of what we understand about three-dimensional form comes from touch, not from sight. This is a very important point. That when you touch something, you actually understand more of the form of it, the three-dimensional form, and especially you understand the mass of it because you can feel it with your hand, whereas with your eyes, it's just like a little projector going out from your eyes that catches the light, and obviously it goes into your brain and is recorded and whatnot, but there's no tactile sensation that records what's going on with the form. If you want to draw form better, you need to touch that form. So even in this moment where I've drawn for more than 30 years, if I just feel this a bit and get a sense of what it's doing, right? I can feel that there's an arc right in the middle here, a little bend. So when I come up and over, instead of going straight down, there's a little bit of a, I'm going to illustrate it and draw it darker so you can see it, but there's a little bit of a hump here. It goes up and then it comes down, and even when I was touching, I can feel areas that are firmer and softer, areas that get a little bit harder right there where there's cartilage and bones underneath, and a little harder and softer. So letting my pencil actually feel what I'm actually drawing rather than just dictating what I think I'm seeing. So now up into the next finger. The next finger, it's rather bold. It's a nice little guy. Strong, thin, kind of goes up pretty high. You can see the relationship between these two fingers. It's going that way, so I can be aware of that, but I'm more interested in drawing the life than I am in drawing an accurate mechanical representation of the thing, breaking it down into proportions and all that. I want to maintain its wholeness and its life the whole time. So the next finger comes up and over, and oh, I see 3 of you are watching. If you have any questions, send me a note. I am looking at the chat, and if things are working out for you, just stick with me and say like, okay, I'm okay right now. We can do, what I realized was the YouTube format, I forgot again. It doesn't allow you all to meet with me like in a Zoom setting where I can turn it on and off. So we're probably going to do these, I might announce some of these shorter ones on Zoom that just introduce what we'll be doing, but then we'll switch over to a format where we can all talk and draw together and see what everybody's working on. And if you don't want to be seen, you just won't turn your camera on or you won't draw. But why come to a drawing thing if you're not going to draw, right? Come to a drawing thing because you want to draw. And I wanted to talk a little bit tonight about something. Remind me of what the word basics means. Remind me, as if you're going to be able to talk to me. But remind me. So anyways, this is starting to wake up. It's a little bit of a flat patty hand anyways. But one of the things I noticed right away is the center of my hand is up in the air. If I push down, you see my knuckle here? This finger goes down, right? So what that would mean is right now I have it drawn as if it's in the air, but I didn't continue that in the air through here. So if you look, the center here looks like it's collapsed. It doesn't come up. And so just like when I was talking earlier about a form Like if we consider this a mountain and we call this a mountain, the mountain also goes this way, right? It crosses over this way. So that's a mountain curve too. Both curves point up into the sky. If it dented down a little, this curve would dent down a little. It would go the opposite direction. So it wouldn't go up, it would go down, and you'd see it dip a little bit. Now I'm exaggerating it again for dramatic effect. But but know that this is up higher than I drew it. So even if I drew a curve that was going uphill, let's just say that that's up, right? It would have to go up a little bit more. It'd have to be a little more plump to actually have it feel like it's up in the air like that. And it's not dramatic like this. That would be something like this, right? That would really come up. But it's just coming up a little bit. It's not flat. It's up a little bit. So I have to allow that to happen. And even this one line that I drew through here, I'm going to draw it darker so you see it. But even this initial gestural line started to lift the hand up. But do you see where the apex of the curve is? The apex is the top of the curve, right? The top of the curve is over here. But the top of the curve has to be right here where my hand is at its highest. And so the top of the curve would come up, and then this line would go down again. And I'm exaggerating a bit to make the point, but I would have to bring these lines up through here and then down so that they would exhibit what is actually happening in the hand. So that's already, it's a bad cartoon to show you what I'm talking about. I kind of love it actually, because it looks like my fingers are made of rubber right now. And over time that would go away if I wanted it to. I would just have to work on it and drive it in that direction. But one of the things I love about it is that it feels more alive. It just feels like a living hand. It doesn't look like a mechanical robot hand. A lot of people draw, you know, a perfectly designed hand, and it just looks to me like an alien. Like it just has no life to it. And it's my personal thing. I have a thing about drawing life and having life come to drawings, and I can't let it go. So I'm gonna keep doing it and keep teaching it. I think it's one of the things that's missing so greatly from most drawing is life. So I said I would talk about basics a little bit. It wasn't the plan tonight. The plan tonight was to get off of methods and all that madness and have some fun and surf the biscuit. My name is Basket, and they used to call me Biscuit, and that's why we have Surf the Biscuit. Surf with the Biscuit, because it's kind of like drawing. Drawing is like surfing. You're moving on a wave, moving on the water, moving on life, and not trying to stop life. That's the dead life. I think of it being more alive than that. Everything's moving around me, even if it's moving slowly, it's still moving towards life. So the basics to me are something very simple. The word gesture is very familiar to a lot of artists, but they don't all know what it stems from. What it stems from is the word in Latin it means to bear or carry, okay? To bear or carry. So what does my hand bear or carry? And it's tough, right? Your brain will sort of lock up sometimes, but if you start playing and just look around the room you're in and think, what does my hand have in common with anything else that bears or carries something similar? And what I can see right away is trees around me. I see a lot of pine trees. And so if I said to myself, okay, here's the trunk, right? Here's the leaves. And so my forearm and my wrist bear some of the stability of this whole enterprise, right? They're very solid. And the top of my hand is leaves. It moves like the wind. And so I want it to float and breathe a little, right? On the top of this stick of an arm. That would be the gesture of bearing or carrying something. Gesture is also like a kind gesture, so it's a figure of speech. It's also something like your heartbeat or your breath. It's literally life. And so life is pulsing through this little guy here, and I'm trying to capture some of that life, right? And feel it. And we did it extensively, so I'm not going to do it again tonight, but we did it extensively here. And so far, so good. A little bit more of the basics would be something called contour. And we all know a contour to be, you know what people mistakenly call it? The mistake is that they call it the outline of something. That's a mistake. They call it an outline. An outline is this. This is an outline. Okay, this is an outline. Wah, wah. And I don't have to do the whole hand. I can just do a piece. But that's the outline of my hand. That is 100% flat. It's just like a grid. You put a grid on it, put a grid on it, and that's what you got. You got, it's an outline, and an outline, I'm writing upside down for y'all. You got to be happy about it. An outline is a shape. You got me? An outline is a shape. It's a flat thing. A contour, in opposition to that, a contour has volume to it. So a contour, you'd feel, this is a wonderful word, the eliding joints. I'll show you it in a minute because we're talking about basics. Eliding. Eliding means that one thing passes right by another. So that's an eliding joint right there. Okay. So this is also called a T-joint. Okay. A T-joint. This is the head right here. This is the tail off the end. So the tail intersects the head. It smacks into the head. And I can exhibit this in reality. Let me just take 2 sheets of paper and I'll show it to you real fast. If this is the head here, and you know what? This would probably be better if I showed it at the edge of this board so you can see. This is the head and that's the tail. The tail intersects the head, correct? And the tail in life is always behind the head. This is in a book called Visual Intelligence by Hoffman. It's beautiful. We're actually going to do sections on books, and you all can write me notes. So if you have any questions, you can leave them in the chat. I think I can see the chat right now. Leave a note and just say, like, what do you mean by that? Or I'm thinking about this. Does that make sense? You can trust yourselves to ask almost anything. But anyways, this is the tail and the head of the T-joint. And as I drew it here, it would be something like really, really slivery like that. Like you see the head and the tail behind just sliding by, and that's called an eliding joint because they're passing right by each other. It's so woo. They're zooming right past each other and they're not banging into each other. Okay? And those eliding moments are all over the body. There's little subtle moments where something is behind or in front of something else, and it's so subtle how the 2 joints pass. They don't bang up against each other like this often in the body. It's all these lovely soft curves like that. You see that? That's a beautiful kind of body combination, eliding joint right there, right? This is not a body-friendly joint. And so look at the lines that you have, and I'll give you a real quick kind of hint, lesson, whatever you want to call it. But a lot of people draw the edge of a body coming like, let's just say we're at the edge of a finger. I'm going to draw this just so you have something to know what I'm talking about, a model. That's the outline of my finger, right? At the edge of it, it goes around the back and then comes over the front and then goes around the other side, right? A lot of people will bring the form around and then bang it into the edge, right? They'll make that T-joint. T-joint. And what you want to do is have it elide that edge, go gliding past that edge, because what's happening is the top of the finger is facing your face. It's flat to your face, it's flat to your paper, and then it goes all the way around until it's perpendicular or facing right into your paper, right? And that's where it passes by like that and lines right up with the edge of the form. Got that? Crazy. We can talk a lot more about form. There's also a free book on my website. Go to thomasbosket.com, and there's a free book at the bottom on form. And it's not going to be free for long because I decided it's a lot of work that I put up for free, and so I'm going to take it down. So download it in the next day or two. I don't see any questions, so we're good there. I hope that I've answered some of the things that you're wondering about tonight. If you have any more, I want to know them. We got about 6 more minutes tonight just to try this out. I think we talked about eliding joints. We talked about outline and shape. We talked about, so if we go back to the notion of outline and shape, what you're ultimately talking about when the joints start to pass one another like that is you're talking about form. You're talking about form, and you're talking about 3-dimensional form. And so there you go. That's what it is. Do you have any questions before we go tonight? Anybody? Y'all good? All right. I love you. And I hope you're well.